Perfect. I also started the recording, so let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar with us. It's now 4 p.m. set for the Europeans and very early or very late for the rest of you guys, but we are very happy that you are here today. The topic is 50 ways to wreck collaboration and what to do about it. And with me today, I have my fantastic colleagues from the South African team, Mariet and Regina, and they are going to present to you about collaboration and defensiveness and so on. My name is Sophia, and I'm going to host you today in the background. Before I'm going to hand over to Regina and Mariet, we're going to just walk you through how to use Zoom with us today. As some of you already probably know, you can chat with us throughout the session. Just make sure that the setting on the chat is panelists and attendees for everyone to be seeing your comments. Beside the chat, you will also find the Q&A. So you are very allowed to ask a lot of good questions to Mariet and Regina. And we will have a look at the questions in the end of the webinar with you guys. So use the Q&A for the questions, please. This session is also recorded, and we are going to share with you guys here in the live session the recording and also the slides, so you don't need to make any notes on today's session if you don't like to. The recording will also be available then on social media and our website and so on. So if you have anyone who is missing the session today, you can also share it around later. And that's it from my side. I'm going to be in the chat with you guys, so stay tuned also there. And I'm going to hand over now to Mariet and Regina, and I will be back when we talk questions later. So enjoy.
Thank you, Sophia. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's really great to be here with you guys today. My name is Mariet Visser. I'm an Agile coach, trainer, and facilitator with Agile 42. I'm based, you guys shared some locations already. I'm based in Cape Town, South Africa. I have been on my own journey since about 2010, 2011. So I'm really looking forward to speaking to you guys today. I still have a lot to learn on all kinds of topics, including collaboration. But essentially, I enjoy working with people and organizations, helping them as best as I can, as many others have helped me on my own journey up to here. So that's just a little bit about me. I won't go too much further into detail. There's a bit more on the presentation. And I'll move us over to Regina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Regina, and yeah, I'm an Agile trainer and coach. I'm also a certified radical collaboration trainer. So you will also see some of the radical collaboration things coming through in the presentation today, in the webinar today. And I'm a collaboration geek. I read up a lot on collaboration. I've got a lot of books on collaboration, and I'm exploring collaboration, especially in non-agile, non-IT environments. And I've got quite a bit of experience with regards to that. I'm multilingual, so I speak 3.5 languages, English and Portuguese, which is my first language. I speak Afrikaans, and I guess I speak half of French, actually. Maybe half of Spanish too, but a little bit of a multilingual person. I love cats. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I'm an Indiana Jones and Star Wars fan. And right now I love Instagram. Facebook is not in my good books right now, and the chances are that I'll be off Facebook soon. But Instagram, ironically enough, owned by Facebook, is my best friend. And even though the photo shows me sitting on top of Table Mountain in Cape Town, I am based in Johannesburg in South Africa. That's me. So let's go through what we'll be talking about today. So we're going to start off with what is collaboration and why it is important, and how do we collaborate. So Mariet's going to share some things with you about that. Then I'll move over to the whole defensiveness part. And so what is the problem with defensiveness, and what about defensiveness and collaboration? What is the problem with defensiveness and collaboration? What do we do about it? And then we'll finish our presentation and we'll open this up for questions. So without any further delays.
Great. Excellent. Awesome. So I'd like to kick the conversation off with a bit of a focus on what collaboration is, why it's important, how do we do it and enable it. Okay, so let's start with what is collaboration. And I invite you guys to start us off by submitting some of your own answers in the chat. And I'll give you a moment for that. What is collaboration to you? Working together. Yeah, I see in the chat some messages coming through. Working together, working with 2+ people, getting something done with other people, trusting people I work with, communication, building on ideas, no silos, getting along towards a common goal, supporting each other, teamwork. Great. So there's already some well-rounded knowledge on the topic in the space here today. So that's a great start for us. So the Cambridge Dictionary defines it as an act of working together with other people or organizations to create or achieve something. I see it as working together collectively to achieve a common goal by way of exploring and applying all of our ideas, thinking skills, and the diversity that exists among us to get us there. It's a way for us to get things done, to share with one another and to learn from one another, all while having some fun together, right? Remember, it's a bit of a creative and sometimes crazy process that we go through when we collaborate. So collaboration is really a skill that I find we constantly need to be working at, that we evolve in over time. As our context and the people we work with shifts, so does how we collaborate. Not all of our relationships are equal. Some are more trusting and open than others, and our ability to be open and honest with one another can have a real impact on our ability to collaborate. Collaboration is not just about how we work with others, it's also about becoming more self-aware in order to come to know and understand how we can work even better together with others. So let's understand why collaboration is important. Okay, I thought it'd be nice to share some insights from within our Agile 42 space from colleagues of mine, why they think collaboration is so important. So here's some of what they had to say. So one of my colleagues said, you can't know everything yourself and do everything yourself. You need different skills and perspectives for solving complex problems. How often have you found yourself stuck, looking at something from the same viewpoint, not able to brainstorm more options than that one clear one you've already thought of? Yet you know there must be another way, and so you don't give up. What do? So me, I found myself so often walking down the passage, bumping into a colleague, having a random conversation, and boom, some new thought patterns emerge. And this has literally happened to me more often than I can say. So how often is this happening now virtually? Because I think it's much more difficult for that spur of the moment conversation to just help jerk our thinking and help us think of other ideas, other ways of approaching situations. So ponder on that for a moment. Another colleague shared, it almost always leads to a synergy where the whole is more than the sum of its parts and it builds relationship. And another one, and I'll let you guys read the rest, I'll just cover 3 of them. Another one was, without it, individuals will move somewhere else and the risk of chaos will rise. So I, for one, at times I enjoy working on my own. And more than that, I enjoy working together with others. I know I don't have all the answers. I know my creativity is often sparked by others sharing their perspectives and experiences. So for me, to be able to work together with others is very important. And it's not something I'd happily be willing to live without. So people might move away if that space isn't created. And chaos will ensue because new relationships might need to be formed. New people will join, and there's many things that might lead into that. So collaboration, I find, is really important. We live in a VUCA world. Volatility, uncertainty, change, and ambiguity is all around us. And we need one another to navigate that level of complexity, to make the best sense of situations where we're faced with situations with which we're faced within our organizations in order for us to survive. Collaborating allows us to lean into our diversity, our disparate perspectives and experiences, which unlocks new insights and our ability to innovate. In an interview with Steve Jobs a couple of years back, like years back now, he said the organizations managing to connect all their workers across information silos work more effectively. Also, the ones harnessing their people's knowledge and collective intelligence generate more revenue, more profits, and are worth more. Isn't that worth striving for? Reaching for more in our organizations. When people have an opportunity for their voice to be heard, for them to input into where we're headed and how we get there, we create a sense of shared ownership, enabling us to go much farther together than we could do alone. In Agile 42, South Africa, that's where I'm based, we make many of our decisions together. We do much of the work together or in pairs wherever we can. And this has really enabled us to move beyond where we've come from and to even nurture motivation within our team and have the really hard yet necessary conversations that sometimes help move us forward together. Okay, so now I wonder, how do we do it? How do we enable collaboration? And again, I want to invite you guys in the chat to share what were or are you and your organization doing, and how are you enabling it, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. And I'll give you a moment. Trust, openness, transparency, engaging all team members, honesty, creating that psychological safety, that space. Yeah, great comments. Facilitating dialogue. Yeah, great. So there's some really good ideas already from within the space that we're in. Really glad to see that. So again, I thought it would be great to hear not only from me as I talk about these topics, but also to see what some of my Agile 42 colleagues had to say on the subject and to share it with you. So I'm going to share all of these with you, and I'm going to share them a little bit with my own insights. So one of my Agile 42 colleagues, they said, by creating transparency around what we do and what we want to achieve. So someone in the comments, you guys already said transparency, right? So creating transparency is really important. And as I go through these comments from my colleagues, what I want us to think about is the world has really shifted. We've, over the past year, had to find new ways of working, find new ways of collaborating. Some of us might be back into face-to-face collaboration environment. Some of us might still be needing to collaborate virtually. What I want you to think about is how different or similar is collaboration in a face-to-face environment versus a virtual environment. Because some things are similar or the same, the way that I've come to experience it over this time period, and some things are different. So for instance, transparency, creating transparency, for me, this remains important whether you're face-to-face or virtual. Yeah, we need to create transparency. It doesn't matter whether we're face-to-face or virtual. So another one of my colleagues said, take people from where they are and what they are used to. For me, this speaks to helping them out of their comfort zones. Without stepping just a little bit out of our comfort zones, it's much harder to grow beyond those comfort zones. And helping people move beyond their comfort zones just a little, remember, we're not here to scare them or harm them, remains important whether you're face-to-face or virtual, so that we can help people to grow, to move beyond where they are. Here's another one. Wherever possible, we work in tandem at our customers, and wherever possible, we pair on work that needs to be done internally. This adds perspective and diversity. So we pair whenever we get the opportunity in Agile 42. In the South African team, we actually refer to this as our Piglet principle, born from the Winnie the Pooh quote, where Piglet leans into Pooh and whispers, "It's so much more friendlier with two." So this two for us especially remains important, whether we're finding ourselves collaborating face-to-face or virtually. Here's another quote. Have a shared vision, what we aspire to, a shared goal, what we might need to achieve to the path to success, and collectively plan and execute the work that needs to happen in line with that goal. Having a clear and well-communicated vision for people to connect with, and clear and achievable goals that speak to that vision, which together we can work towards achieving, remains important whether you're face-to-face or virtual. Frequently reflect with the collab group, not just about the progress being made, also on how we're working together, so that we can continuously improve our way of work. So I mentioned a little earlier, I mentioned about self-awareness and how important it is as far as our ability to collaborate goes. And so I've personally found that it is exceptionally important to stop and reflect how we're working together, how we're making space for one another, whether we're listening to one another, whether we're being open to all ideas, so that that reflection can help lead us to improving how we collaborate with one another. And that, again, remains important whether face-to-face or virtual. And the last one is practically a working agreement for collaboration. Emotionally, people have to want to collaborate in the first place. Just listen to that sentence. People have to want to collaborate in the first place. So creating an agreement of how we want to be with one another, the space we want to create for one another, the behaviors we want to see in our collaborative efforts is a really helpful way for us to create an environment that enables better collaboration. One in which we feel we're able to collaborate, and one in which we want to collaborate. And again, another short and sweet rule of thumb, which still remains important whether face-to-face or virtual collaboration is at play. So, of course, some things are different in how we collaborate virtually. And in my experience, it mostly includes things such as resources, tools, and the structures we make use of. So in Agile 42, we've come to learn a few things that I want to share with you. All right. What I want to share with you is that being able to see and hear one another clearly really helps to continue nurturing those human connections. We don't all have the same access to the same equipment, and we need to bear this in mind and do what's possible. So for instance, I was working with a team where everyone had different connectivity availability. Some had stronger lines than others. Some had data limitations where others didn't. So we had a conversation to understand where each other's circumstances, to understand what's possible, what's not. And the team went into an agreement to start and end all calls with video on, in order to spend a moment connecting with one another as fully as is possible virtually, and then to turn videos off for the middle part of their calls. And they practiced this the majority of times, and on a case-by-case basis where they felt the essence of the call required their full presence, they'd have a short conversation and agree to treat that call differently, in that they'd have video on for the whole duration of that call. We've also learned in Agile 42 that it's much more useful for everyone to connect via their own devices. That way the experience among everyone is more equal. Right? Think about that for a moment. If you have multiple people connecting from one device in the same room, how equal is the airtime, for instance, if they want to speak? And how included are the people on the other end of that line if it's only one or two people where everyone else is in the same room together? Okay. We also learned that there are some very useful tools that enable real-time virtual collaboration, where we can brainstorm, where we can problem solve and create together. So in Agile 42, we use Zoom and Miro for a lot of this. Zoom being a cloud platform for video and audio conferencing, what we're using today for the webinar, which has really great breakout room functionality, which enables a variance in how we're able to engage at a communication level, having whole group discussions versus breaking out into smaller group discussions and then returning together later. Miro is an intuitive online collaborative whiteboard platform with some really powerful visual tools, allowing teams to collaborate similarly to what they have done face-to-face. So it's very real time. And you can pretty much do there what you were able to do face-to-face in terms of using whiteboards, flip charts, sticky notes, workstream visualization and operation, that sort of thing. So we learned that as much as it's important to plan for collaboration in any event, it's now more than ever before important that we plan and we think about how it will be enabled in our sessions. So we really need to think about how the session will flow from start to finish, how the tools and the flow of the session will be in support of one another, the time boxes for each step of that designed session flow, when, how, for how long we want to enable divergence, where we expand on ideas and thinking, and when, how, and for how long we want to enable convergence, where we come together on ideas and our thinking. We really need to plan well for our virtual collaboration interactions. So this is what I kind of wanted to speak to you about today. And as much as there's so much more to this topic, and there's also some really, really important and difficult pitfalls that we might bump into along the way as we explore collaboration and try and enable collaboration within our organizations, things that can really wreck collaboration for us. And my colleague Regina is going to share a little bit more with us on this now. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariet. So as Mariet said, let's chat about what is it that can wreck collaboration. And it's going deeper on the things Mariet said and deeper into the human system. And before that, I'd like to share with you a cautionary tale about chickens. So it's a story about groups of chickens, actually. And it refers a study at Purdue University by the Department of Genetics. And the professors were looking at the differences between groups of chickens. One group of chickens they were nice chickens. They got along with each other. They were termed the green zone chickens. In this group, there were no star performers. And in the chicken world, apparently, star performers are chickens that lay the most eggs. So they are stars because they lay the most eggs. Of course, star performers are more aggressive. And they become star performers, not because they're great at laying eggs, but because they suppress the egg laying capability of the other chickens. We sometimes see this happen in human systems, in some organizations. And how they suppress the egg laying capability of other chickens is by pecking the other chickens. And sometimes they peck the other chickens to death. The star performers belong to red zones. So the groups with star performers, they named those groups the red zone chickens. And those chickens do a lot of damage to each other. And they don't lay too many eggs. Farmers, to get around the whole problem of chickens pecking each other to death, is they either put chickens in their own cages, which can be quite expensive, or they go around trimming the beaks of the chickens, which can be quite an unpleasant experience for the chicken and also for the person who's going around doing the trimming. So the research that the professors at Purdue University were doing is whether they could breed collaborative chickens and thereby impact production. So in other words, breed more green zone chickens. So they bred 2 generations of both green zone chickens and red zone chickens. So green zone as collaborative and red zone, the aggressive chickens. So what happened was the following. The green zone chickens were more healthy and they were more productive. The red zone chickens, more than half of these had died. They'd been murdered by their colleagues. They'd been bitten to death or pecked to death by their colleagues. The egg production of the green zone chickens went up 260% in that 1 year. So you might be wondering what this means for human systems. Well, red zone environments that are more aggressive and internally competitive typically have less collaboration happening. Whereas green zone environments produce more, well, the equivalent of eggs in your organization, whatever the equivalent of eggs is in your organization. So people in red zone environments lack the skills to deal with conflict and to collaborate better. Of course, people in green zone environments do things a lot better. So what is the problem with red zone environments? And one of the problems with red zone environments is that they do not deal, the individuals don't deal with their defensiveness very well, which causes conflict. And the best, most effective way of resolving conflict and collaborating better is to manage your defenses. When people become defensive, when you become defensive, when I become defensive, thinking becomes rigid. There's no flexibility, there's no room for flexibility, and we actually cannot think straight. Never mind trying to solve complex problems. Defensiveness distorts reality, and it prevents us from being creative, as I mentioned before. The interesting thing about defenses is that they are usually based on fear. And there are 3 main fears that cause defensive behavior in people. It's fears about our own significance, fears about our own competence, and fears about our own likability. So when we have fears about our significance, competence, and likability, there are certain defensive behaviors which show up, which affect our relationships and affects our ability to collaborate. Defenses are also biological. Often when people are defensive, they feel it in their body, whether it is breaking out into a sweat or going cold all over or an increased heartbeat. Those are just some reasons, some ways of people feeling defensiveness. Clammy palms can also be a sign of defensiveness. And there's actually about 50 of these signs of defensiveness, and a lot of them are biological. Defenses are also unconscious. We are really not aware of when we are defensive. It just happens. It's unconscious. a lot of our fears are unconscious. So we only know we have become defensive when we see our relationships breaking down, or when our communication is not landing the way we intended it to land. Defenses are also autonomous. So they have, because they're unconscious, they happen. There's a trigger and people react in a defensive manner. So you can't control those defenses if they are unconscious. You can't just say, okay, I'm going to be defensive now. All right. So now you are defensive. The defenses are autonomous. They behave of their own accord. And defenses also offer only temporary relief. So it's not a permanent, or it's not even a way of solving problems. They offer merely some temporary relief. And we have them for a reason. The main reason why we have defenses is for self-preservation, right? It goes back to us protecting ourselves and to defend you from feeling your own fears. It's not very pleasant for us to feel that we are not important enough, or to feel that we are not competent enough, or to feel that we are not liked. So our defenses also protect us from experiencing our own fears. And defensiveness not only feeds on itself on an individual level, it also spreads to other people. When one person becomes defensive in a team, the relationship in that group can change, and other people may react defensively as well. So you've got two or more people being defensive and they are reacting defensively, which can lead, it does lead to conflict. And all of this can happen very quickly. The speed at which defensiveness happens is very quick. So we need to always be on guard. Our fears about our significance, our competence, and our likability are actually what comes out. And for example, if I was afraid, if I had a fear about this webinar and about coming across as professional in this webinar, I might have a fear about my own significance or about my own competence. That I may be, with my team, I may behave defensively because I'm worried about, or I'm afraid of how I'm going to come across in this webinar. And I could be coming across defensively, which would lead to a breakdown in relationship with my team. And in fact, I think as I was preparing for this webinar this week, I probably did come across as defensive. And I found myself becoming defensive, and I found myself pausing and asking, so what is actually going on for me? What am I afraid of? And I thought about that, and I realized I was actually worried about this webinar, to be completely honest with you. What I'd like to show you now is the 50 signs of defensiveness. So based on research, these are 50 ways that you can wreck your collaborative relationships. Right, so I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm just going to pick up on a few of them. So loss of humor. If you find yourself losing your sense of humor, that could be a sign of defensiveness. The other one is withdrawal into deadly silence, which I know is one of my defensive behaviors. When I withdraw into deadly silence, it may not always be because I'm really thinking about things, but I could be feeling defensive. Wanting the last word. There's people that like to always have the last word. Flooding with information. So another way that people deal with, show defensiveness is providing a lot of information, justifying and defending their opinions or points of view. That can be a sign of defensiveness. Another one could be poor me, or I'm always it's always my fault. Poor me. Denial and not wanting to negotiate. There's also some physiological ones, which is fast breathing, fast heart rate, cold, clammy skin, tight stomach, confusion. It's just who I am. I'm sure you know people that say, oh, this is just who I am. It's my personality, so just deal with it. It's a sign of defensiveness. And I'm moving on to the next slide because there are more signs of defensiveness in the next slide. Being too nice. We've talked about the red zones and the green zones. And when people are being too nice, when teams are being too nice, even though there are undercurrents of conflict, we call that the pink zone. People are in the pink zone where everything is nice and awesome. In the meantime, below the surface, there's conflict. So it could be also another sign of defensiveness. Holding a grudge, trivializing with humor, minimizing everything, so just saying, oh, that's not important, or magnifying everything, blowing things up out of all proportion. And attacking is also quite a common defense mechanism, and it's based on the best defense is a good offense. So these are just some ways that you can wreck collaboration by being defensive. And what I want to do now is just run a poll. So let's just do a poll, and Fia is going to launch a poll with just a few signs of defensive. So think about what is your defensive behaviors, and just select the ones that you feel you display when you're defensive. Okay, we've got withdrawal into deadly silence. Ah, wow. I'm glad to see I'm not the only one that does that. Okay. Okay, quite a lot of people are voting. Thank you so much. Sarcasm. Oh, indeed, sarcasm. Yes, definitely a sign of defensiveness. Okay. All right. Okay, so yeah, withdrawal into deadly silence is the one that 56% of you have said is your how you show your defensive behavior, and it is closely followed by high charge of energy in the body, and also sarcasm and the fast breathing or heartbeats. Okay, great. So I'm going to, and I'm sure you can see that. Oh, let me see what else there is. Okay, yeah, wanting to be right and wanting the last word. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing because it's always interesting to understand what are the most common signs of defensiveness, and you can probably recognize those. And of course, how we show defensiveness at any particular point in time is not necessarily the default, because you could react, or anybody could react defensively in different ways depending on the context. Although I know withdrawal into deadly silence is my favorite one, it makes it a lot easier for me to recognize when I'm being defensive, because I know that that's my default. So what do you do about it? How do you actually ensure that you're able to grab a hold of your defenses and grab a hold of them, rather than allowing the defenses grab a hold of you? And what I'd like to do is just go through a few points. So the first thing that I suggest is becoming tuned with your outward behavior. And learn to spot your signs of defensiveness and use that as an alert system. So you can do two things. You can use that as like a sign of, okay, now I'm going on the attack and engage in conflict, or you can use that knowledge and say, all right, what is going on for me? It's an alert that could impact my relationship with the group at this point in time. And then create a personalized defensiveness action plan. And there's 6 points. The first thing is take responsibility for your defensiveness, for your behaviors, for your fears. Acknowledge that you're feeling defensive to yourself. And if there's enough trust in your team, acknowledge it to your team. And I'll give you an example. So when I'm feeling defensive and withdrawal into deadly silence is what I normally do, the best thing for me to do, and it takes a lot of courage, is to actually acknowledge to my team saying, I've been triggered. And this is what's happening for me. And that allows that to become surface. It allows me to take responsibility for that, not to place it on the other, on my team's shoulders, but just so that they are aware that this is what is happening for me. Then focus out. Take a breath, focus on what's happening in your body physically. Breathe so that you can reinvigorate your brain. We need oxygen in our brains in order to think, right? We need to think straight. And one great way is to breathe. Or if you want to yawn, yawning increases oxygen to the brain. You can yawn, you can breathe, but just make sure that you reactivate and reinvigorate your brain. Then focus inside, focus in, find the fear. Find the fear that has triggered, and then check your assumptions about that fear. Right? If it's a fear of feeling that you are not liked, if it's a fear around likability, more often than not, that fear is not a rational fear. So check your assumptions about that fear. Then check your negative self-talk. We have voices in our heads all the time. We're always talking to ourselves. So it's your AID. So check your negative self-talk. What are you saying to yourself? And reframe it into something positive. It requires you to just be conscious about that. And then create an action step. And what I mean by that is, okay, you've taken responsibility. You've acknowledged that you're feeling defensive, at least to yourself. You've taken a few deep breaths. You've realized this is what's happening for you. You're trying to reframe what's going on in your brain. And then you say, all right, this is what I'm going to do so that I do not become defensive. And one of the things that I do is to actually mention it to my team, saying, this is what's happening for me. I'm taking responsibility for it. Whatever it is. There is a Jim Tam, who is one of the co-creators of Radical Collaboration, and he's got a TED Talk. He often talks about this woman that he worked with. Her sign of defensiveness was to always have the last word. So her action step was, when she found herself becoming defensive and wanting to always give the last word, she used to imagine taking this thing called the last word, opening the door and throwing it out the door, closing the door and putting and making sure that the last word did not become part of the relationship. So she physically created this thing that she threw out of the door called the last word. And then what do you do next? You start over, because this is a recovery model. It is not a perfection model. Okay, you're not going to get it right all the time. It's about being aware, it's about taking responsibility, and it's about starting over and recovering, improving all the time, and see how your relationships change as a result of that. So I've got some homework for you. We're almost at the end, and I just want to move to the next slide. There we go. So now I'm giving you homework. You don't have to do it. This isn't like grading homework. So if you don't do it, it's okay. You are the only person who's going to grade yourself. Is create your personalized defensiveness action plan using the 6 points in the previous slide. You're going to receive this presentation, so you'll be able to see what those are again. And then practice it so that it becomes second nature. And then start seeing how it impacts your relationships. So that's my ask. Well, see how you become a better green zone person. So just some acknowledgements before we open up to questions is, of course, I'm a certified radical collaboration trainer. I trained with Jim Tam, one of the co-creators. And so the information I've shared around radical collaboration is referenced with permission. Jim and I have chatted and he gave me permission to use this. And any photographs are from Unsplash. So we are now moving over to questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thanks to both you, Regina and Marit, for the good presentation. There's been a lot of good comments and feedbacks already in the chat, so we are very happy that you all engaged with us. And there are also a little bit of questions already that are coming in, so I was thinking I will read them out loud for you, and then you can choose Marit or Regina, whoever wants to answer, or if you want to do it together somehow. So the first question that we have is, how can we manage a team member if he or she is defensive all the time?
Shall I take that, Marit? Okay, cool.
Okay.
So one of the things that you should not do is to say you're being defensive. You don't do that, because that is going to exacerbate the situation, right? So I would take a coaching approach to that, and also be very careful, because some people don't like to be perceived or be coached, and I would be gentle about it, and I would ask, so what is going on for you? If I have the opportunity to have a session with them afterwards, I would do that. If the defensiveness is becoming destructive in the team, or in the session, for example, say, for example, like we are not working in the offices now, so we see each other across the Zoom screen, is I would adopt a coaching approach, and I wouldn't try to find out what is going on. I would actually ask that person to reframe, depending on how things are coming across, to reframe anything they say in the positive. If they are withdrawing into deadly silence, I would not necessarily bring them out during a session. I would ask what's going on afterwards. So it depends very much on what's happening. If it's open conflict, it's something that I would need to deal with, because that would be impacting the session. And I like using interest-based, focusing on interests. As I mentioned, withdrawal to deadly silence, definitely not, because that, knowing myself, I definitely don't want to be called out in a session in any way. So I would adopt or go back into the coaching stance. Those of you familiar with the Agile coaching approach, I would go into the coaching stance and take it from there. Yeah. First of all, I would actually look at myself first, right? So first look at become aware of how it's affecting me, because I might not be in a good state to deal with that, or to ask that, or even to decide what to do next. If it becomes very disruptive, I would try and surface it then. If it's not disruptive, I would deal with it afterwards.
Sounds good. So are there any like gentle ways then to make someone aware of them being defensive? How can you approach that?
Yeah, so that's a tricky one, because you can't tell people they're being defensive, right? You can't tell people that they are not collaborating well or anything like that. So instead of focusing on the behavior, and try now that you know a little bit more about the three fears, try and understand it for yourself. But don't. So what I wouldn't do is to say, you've got these fears and this is what's going on, so let's fix it. That person has got to actually become aware of that themselves. You can't make a person change or understand things about themselves. So I would focus on the behavior and the impact on the team, because a team needs to work well together. So remove the focus from the individual and focus on the work of the team. And then that then usually it helps you inform what next step you should take. So it's like soccer. It's like play the ball, not the man, right? Focus on the work of the team, not focus on the individual.
Thanks. So if you want to introduce then this topic to a team, how do you suggest that that's done? We mentioned already in the chat the training that we keep from ICF, yeah. But is there some other way that you could maybe introduce this?
Yeah. You could start a discussion saying about yourself and saying, I've recently come across this webinar. These are the 50 signs of defensiveness. You could put them up. You could show them, let's maybe do a poll, or maybe create an exercise around that. And then not say be aware you need to change, just say this is very interesting, and see how it can impact the work of the team, you know, and let people be open if they want to. So use the 50 signs or the 50 signs of defensiveness, because it's based on research, and it's something you could introduce. You could tell the story of the chickens. One other thing, if I may, you can use Jim's TED Talk. Watch the TED Talk as a team. That's a great introduction. I coached at a bank that did exactly that.
Great.
Yeah, and if you just want to introduce the topic of collaboration as a whole, a good way to start is just to have a conversation and talk about how collaboration is already happening in your team or your environment or the organization, depends on what level you're looking at it from. Have some conversations, be open to learn from one another and to explore more ways in which to approach it. So we've shared some things here, and I believe it's going to be turned into a bit of a blog post as well, or something to that effect, so you'll have access to it. So yeah, just start somewhere small through conversation.
And if you need help, probably you can reach out to any one of us in Agile 42. I put some contact details already also in the chat. So feel free if you need help to facilitate such a thing, that we are more than happy to help also there. And there's been a lot of talking now, both in the chat and in the question section, about the red chickens. So how do you manage someone if he or she is a red chicken zone person? Can you a little bit describe if someone's very aggressive and causing defensiveness in the team, for example, or within the other people?
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to give an answer a little bit to the side, like a lateral answer is red zone people in an organization don't become red zone because they are like horrible people. Nobody comes to work wanting to be a horrible person. Look at the culture, look at the context. What is triggering, what could be triggering red zone behavior in people? Mariet, I don't know if you have any other idea,
Yeah, no, that's good.
Somebody suggested chicken soup, but I guess that's
chicken soup.
That's not the right answer.
I saw that. And a bit of a giggle. Thanks, Wade.
That was funny. So we have one more question in the Q&A. Let's take it. If somebody still has questions, just feel free to pop them right now. But is there then an alternative of taking responsibility in front of others? Is the last question.
You don't have to take responsibility in front of others. The 6 steps that I took you through can be something you do yourself. You don't have to share. I share. Why? Because in the South African team, we have an open and honest, high levels of trust. It's what Mariet mentioned when she talked about openness and honesty and trust. Our team, we've got high levels of openness, we've got high levels of transparency and trust. And that's why I do it. I don't always do it, by the way. So those 6 steps, you do it for yourself. Keep it silent, just say, and then by taking responsibility, keeping it to yourself, you are resetting almost how you are going to behave from that point on.
Something I do often, maybe it's helpful, is I come at the end of a day, I go sit down with a drink in hand. I like brandewijn and Coke, and brandy and Coke. So just sit down at the end of the day and think about, so the interactions that I had today, how did that go? And I usually pick one that I think could have gone better. And I think about how could that have gone better? And next time, how would I like that to go next time? And so that's just a little bit of a reflection exercise that I do, that I find is really helpful to help keep us self-aware and connect with you know, the things that we can reflect back on, that we can be honest with ourselves about in how we engage. Yeah.
Cool. There were some talking today in your presentation about remote collaboration. So can you just end the session with giving like your best tips and tricks on how to do it remotely now? Because a lot of us are still remotely at home. So what could make the collaboration even better or greater?
Oh, okay. I thought, okay. So some things which are useful, that I find useful, is to get people to switch the cameras on and off occasionally, you know. And something else which I try to stimulate is, especially when the session starts, is to, you know, people engage in small talk before we start the session, and then to do a proper check-in.
Yeah, some other things is really the working agreement of how we want to be together, establishing that and checking in back on that every so often, like how are we doing? Are we you know, are we doing this justice? Aren't we? Are we creating the space that we said we wanted to create? I believe it also starts with self. I believe it starts with each of us. And so the best we can do is just to model the behavior we want to see. So collaborate in a friendly and nice way, and be open to be challenged, be open to other ideas, be open to just stop and listen even is a good place to start. So yeah, just model the behavior you want to see.
Good. I think that was a very good presentation, and I think we should be ending it here because time is also running up, unfortunately. But I want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Mariet, again, and Regina as well. Guys, everyone who has been listening, very, very nice that you were here. And the recording is going to be up soon. The email is coming with slides and so on with more info. Get in touch with Regina and Mariet and myself on LinkedIn if you want to. Other social media channels for sure as well. Agile 42 pages are there for you guys. Trainings or any kind of other questions you have, you can always contact the offices. And we are very happy to take you from there and see what we can come up with. So also from my side, it's getting dark in Helsinki here. So whoever is still in morning time and daylight, go outside and enjoy a little bit of that. And yeah, see you next time when there's more webinars coming.
Yeah,
thank you, everybody.
It was lovely chatting to you. Keep well, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.